The massive alien ships appeared around Earth like dark clouds blocking out the stars. Each vessel was the size of a small city, covered in weapons that glowed with deadly energy. For 3,000 years, these ships had stayed away from human space. Now they had come back and they looked angry. Ambassador Zeth Kalar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Death's Thunder. He was 12 feet tall with 4 arms and skin like black metal. Scars covered his face from 100 battles. Behind him stood representatives from 12 different alien races, all part of the Great Galactic Confederation. They had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. "Open communication channels to all human worlds," Zeth Kalar commanded. His voice sounded like grinding metal. It is time they learned their place. The holographic display showed Earth spinning, peacefully below. Space stations orbited the blue planet like jewelry around a neck. Ships moved between them, carrying cargo and passengers as if nothing had changed. The aliens expected to see panic, fear, desperate military preparations. Instead, they saw business as usual. "People of Earth," Zeth Kalar's voice boomed across every radio, television, and computer on the planet. "I am Ambassador Zeth Kalar of the Vorthok Empire, speaking for the Galactic Confederation. For 3,000 years we have allowed you to remain in your small corner of space. That time is over." In the United Earth Council building, President Maria Santos watched the broadcast from her office. She sipped her morning coffee and raised an eyebrow at the dramatic alien on her screen. Around the world, humans stopped what they were doing to listen to the strange announcement. "The treaty that kept you safe is broken," Zeth Kalar continued. "You have grown too bold, sending your ships beyond your solar system. You have disturbed the natural order. Therefore, the Confederation demands your immediate surrender. Submit to our rule, or we will destroy every human world we can find." The alien ambassador spread his forearms wide, trying to look as threatening as possible. "You have one of your Earth days to respond. Choose wisely. We have weapons that can turn your sun into a weapon against you. We have armies that have conquered 1,000,000 worlds. Your primitive technology cannot stand against us." The broadcast ended with images of the alien fleet. Thousands of ships filled the space around Earth's moon, their weapons charged with energy that could be seen even from the planet's surface. In the council chambers, the human leaders looked at each other. Admiral Chen Wei-Ming, head of Earth's defense forces, was the first to speak. He started chuckling, then broke into full laughter. "Did he just threaten to use our own sun against us?" Admiral Chen asked, wiping tears from his eyes. "That's adorable. It's like a toddler threatening to knock down a skyscraper with a toy hammer." Defense Minister Sarah Johnson nodded, trying to keep a straight face. "I especially liked the part about their 1,000,000 conquered worlds. Very impressive for a local galactic power." President Santos finished her coffee and stood up. "Well, we can't leave them hanging out there. It would be rude. Send a reply." The human response was broadcast 30 minutes later. President Santos appeared on screen, sitting casually at her desk with Earth visible through the window behind her. "Hello, Ambassador Zeth Kalar and friends," she began with a warm smile. "Thank you for your message. We appreciate you taking the time to visit our solar system. However, we're a bit busy this week with some cleanup work in the outer galaxies. Would next Thursday work for a formal meeting? Say around 2 o'clock Earth time?" She paused to check her calendar. "Oh, and please feel free to use our orbital facilities if you need to refuel or restock supplies. The Visitors Center on Luna Station has some excellent restaurants. I recommend the pizza place on level 7. The broadcast ended with President Santos returning to her paperwork as if she had just scheduled a routine business meeting. On the alien flagship, silence filled the bridge. The representatives from 12 species stared at the now blank screen in confusion. "Did she just," began Counselor Vriktal of the Crystal Hegemony, "offer us pizza?" finished War Prince Krikstar of the Devastator Fleet. Ambassador Zeth Kalar's face turned a darker shade of black metal. "They mock us. This is clearly a primitive species that does not understand the gravity of their situation. Perhaps they are simply buying time to evacuate their important facilities," suggested Admiral Korth of the Starbreakers. "Many species attempt this when they realize they cannot win." Through the flagship's massive viewports, the alien commanders watched human ships moving normally through space. There was no panic, no desperate military buildup, no evacuation fleets heading for deep space. If anything, there seemed to be more traffic than usual, as if Earth was having some kind of celebration. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving thousands of messages from human civilian vessels." "Surrender offers?" Zethkalar asked hopefully. "No, sir. They're asking if we want to buy souvenirs, and something called Alien Invasion t-shirts. Also, several humans have requested permission to visit our ships for what they call selfies." The ambassador's four hands clenched into fists. In all his centuries of conquest, he had never encountered such a response. Species either begged for mercy or died fighting. They didn't offer snacks and photo opportunities. "Perhaps," suggested Counselor Vrichtal carefully, "we should investigate this unusual behavior before taking military action. The humans' confidence suggests they may have capabilities we have not detected." "Impossible," growled War Prince Krikstar. "Our surveillance of this system has been complete for 3,000 years. They have chemical rockets, nuclear weapons, and primitive computers. They barely qualify as a space-traveling species." But even as he spoke, the War Prince felt a nagging doubt. The human ships moving through their solar system looked different from the primitive vessels in their intelligence reports. Sleeker somehow, more advanced. "Run a detailed scan of their defensive capabilities," ordered Ambassador Zethkalar. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." The scan began immediately. The alien sensors, powerful enough to detect a single ship from 1,000 light-years away, focused on Earth and its surrounding space. The results that came back made no sense. "Sir," the sensor operator reported, his voice confused, "the scans are showing massive structures throughout the solar system, but visual confirmation shows only empty space." "Explain," Zethkalar demanded. "It's as if there are enormous installations hidden somehow. The gravity readings suggest structures larger than our biggest starbases, but we can't see them. Also," the operator paused, checking his readings. "Again. Sir, according to these scans, there are defensive platforms positioned around every planet in the system. Each one appears to have more firepower than our entire fleet." "That's impossible," snapped Admiral Korth. "Show me the visual scans." The main screen displayed Earth's solar system as seen by their cameras. Everything looked normal: planets, moons, asteroids, space stations, nothing that could threaten a galactic fleet. "There must be an error with the sensors," Zethkalar decided, "or the humans have some kind of illusion technology. Primitive species often try to appear more dangerous than they are." But deep in his mind, the ambassador remembered stories, old tales from the early days of the Confederation, warnings about a young species that thought differently, that solved problems in ways no one else could imagine, a species that had been contained in one system because they were too dangerous to let loose. Zethkalar had always assumed those stories were myths. Now, watching human ships move casually through space while his sensors detected impossible defenses, he began to wonder if the myths might be true. "Maintain position," he ordered. "We will wait for their formal response, but keep all weapons powered and ready. Something about this situation feels wrong." 3,000 years ago, the first alien scout ships had found Earth during what humans called the early 21st century. The planet was covered with primitive cities, crude factories, and billions of people who had barely begun to explore their own solar system. The aliens watched humans launch simple rockets and fight wars with chemical explosives. To the advanced Galactic Confederation, Earth looked like a child playing with dangerous toys. The decision to contain humanity had been easy. The Confederation built invisible monitoring stations throughout the solar system and declared the area off-limits to all galactic traffic. They would let the humans develop naturally, safely contained in their single star system where they couldn't cause trouble for anyone else. "It was the right choice at the time," explained elder historian Morthak to Ambassador Zethkalar as they reviewed the old records. "The humans showed signs of being extremely violent and unpredictable. Better to let them mature in isolation than risk them spreading their chaos across the galaxy. But now, Captain Sarah Okafor of the human exploration vessel Prometheus was trying to explain something that made no sense to her alien visitor. She sat across from Sub-Commander Yithlos of the Vorthak Empire in her ship's conference room, both of them struggling to understand each other. "You're telling me," Sub-Commander Yithlos said slowly, "that humans have been aware of galactic civilization for over 2,000 years? Captain Okafor nodded patiently. "Oh yes. We've been trading with independent worlds, establishing research stations exploring other galaxies. We just respected the boundaries your people set up around our home system. We thought it was some kind of cultural preservation area." The alien's three eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep confusion in his species. "But our monitoring stations showed no evidence of advanced technology. Your people were still using primitive spacecraft." "Well, yes. In the Sol system," Captain Okafor agreed. "That's the point of a preserve, isn't it, to keep things as they were? We maintained the old technology there because we thought you wanted us to. It's actually quite difficult to keep using chemical rockets when you have access to dimensional fold drives." Sub-Commander Yithlos felt his head beginning to hurt. "You have dimensional fold drives?" "Several different types," the human captain replied cheerfully. "Though we mostly use the quantum tunnel systems now. Much more efficient for long-distance travel. The dimensional folds are mainly for local transport." The alien pulled out his scanner and pointed it at Captain Okafor's ship. According to his readings, the Prometheus was impossibly advanced. Its hull was made from materials that shouldn't exist. Its engines worked on principles that violated several laws of physics. Its weapons, actually his scanner couldn't figure out what the ship's weapons were supposed to do. "How long have you had this technology?" he asked weakly. "Oh, this old thing." Captain Okafor patted the wall of her ship fondly. "The Prometheus is actually one of our older exploration vessels. We built her about 800 years ago for our first expedition to the Andromeda Galaxy. She's due for an upgrade soon, but she's still reliable for local work." "Local work? But you're 1,700 light-years from Earth." "Exactly. Local." Captain Okafor brought up a holographic star chart. "See? This is our local area of operations. We've got research stations, colonies, and defense platforms throughout this region. About 40,000 star systems, give or take." Sub-Commander Yithlos stared at the chart. The human local area was larger than the entire Vorthak Empire. "But that's impossible. Our surveillance would have detected such expansion." "Your surveillance was focused on the Sol system," Captain Okafor explained gently. "And we were very careful not to disturb it. We assumed it was there for our protection to make sure we didn't accidentally damage the preserve while we were learning to control our new technologies." The alien was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, he asked, "What did you think the truce was about?" Captain Okafor looked surprised. "Truce? Oh, you mean the preservation agreement. We thought your people were protecting our birth system from outside influence while we grew up as a species. It was very thoughtful, actually. Lots of species aren't that lucky. Protecting you from outside influence," Sub-Commander Yithlos repeated slowly. "Right. I mean, imagine if some aggressive species had found Earth while we were still figuring out spaceflight. Could have been a disaster. This way we had time to develop properly before making contact with galactic civilization." The alien scanner beeped softly, completing its analysis of the human ship. According to the readout, the Prometheus could probably destroy his entire fleet without working hard at it. The ship's defensive systems alone were more advanced than anything in the Confederation's arsenal. "Captain Okafor," he said carefully, "what would you say is humanity's current level of technological development?" She thought about it for a moment. "Well, we're not quite a full post-galactic civilization yet. We're still working on some of the harder problems like stable time manipulation and consciousness transfer. But we're getting there. Maybe another few hundred years." "Post-galactic," the alien repeated faintly. "You know, beyond the usual galactic level concerns. Most species stop advancing once they've figured out faster-than-light travel and basic energy manipulation. They get comfortable and focus on maintaining their civilizations. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Very sensible approach, Sub-Commander." Ythalos realized his hands were shaking. And humans didn't stop? Oh no, we're terrible at staying still, Captain Okafor laughed. Always curious about what's around the next corner, you know? It drives our philosophers crazy, but it's made for some interesting discoveries. The alien tried to think of how to ask his next question diplomatically. Captain, are you familiar with the Galactic Confederation? Of course. Very impressive organization. You've kept peace in this galaxy for millions of years. We've been studying your methods. Studying our methods? Academic interest, mostly. We're always curious about how different species organize themselves. The Confederation is a fascinating example of stable galactic governance. Our xenosociology departments have written thousands of papers about it. You have xenosociology departments? Oh yes, dozens of them. Human universities love to study alien cultures. We find the diversity fascinating. Every species develops such different solutions to the same basic problems. Sub-Commander Ythalos felt reality shifting around him. Everything his people had believed about humanity was wrong. They weren't primitive, they weren't contained, they weren't even particularly interested in conquest. They were anthropologists. Captain, he said slowly, when humans look at the Galactic Confederation, what do you see? Captain Okafor smiled warmly. A beautiful example of classical galactic civilization. You've created something stable and peaceful that's lasted for millions of years. It's exactly the kind of system that young species should study and respect. Young species? Well, relatively speaking, I mean humans are still figuring things out. We make mistakes, move too fast sometimes, accidentally break things we didn't mean to break. The Confederation shows us what's possible when a civilization really matures. The alien sat in stunned silence. According to the human captain, the mighty Galactic Confederation was a quaint example of an earlier stage of development, like a child's drawing that adults praised for its charm and effort. Captain Okafor, he asked quietly, how many other galaxies do humans operate in? Active operations, maybe a dozen or so. We've got exploratory missions and about 50 others, but those are mostly just research stations and observation posts. We try not to interfere with natural development. Natural development? You know, letting civilizations grow at their own pace. It's important not to rush species before they're ready for advanced concepts. Could cause cultural shock or technological dependence. Sub-Commander Ythalos understood now why the human captain was being so patient and gentle with him. She was talking to him the way a teacher might talk to a bright child who was asking questions about adult topics. Kind, encouraging, but careful, not to reveal too much too quickly. The terrible truth was becoming clear. Humanity hadn't been contained for 3,000 years. They had been politely respecting what they thought was a nature preserve, while quietly growing into something that made the Galactic Confederation look like a small-town government. And now that small-town government had just declared war on a post-galactic civilization. Sub-Commander Ythalos put his head in his hands and tried not to think about what Ambassador Zethkalar would say when he heard this report. The Confederation fleet moved into attack formation around Earth, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Admiral Korth had planned this assault for months, studying every detail of human defensive capabilities. According to their intelligence, Earth had maybe a dozen orbital defense platforms and a few hundred patrol ships. Nothing that could stand against 3,000 alien warships. Begin the attack, commanded Ambassador Zethkalar from his flagship. Target their military installations first, then their government centers. Show them the price of defying the Confederation. The alien ships moved forward like a wave of destruction, their weapons locked onto Earth's space stations and orbital facilities. Energy cannons that could melt mountains prepared to fire. This was supposed to be the moment when humanity finally understood their place in the galaxy. Instead, something impossible happened. Throughout the solar system, space itself seemed to shift and change. What had looked like empty void suddenly filled with massive structures. Defense platforms the size of small moons appeared from nowhere. Weapons arrays that stretched for hundreds of kilometers flickered into view. Energy shields that could have protected entire star systems activated with casual ease. What? Admiral Korth stared at his tactical display in shock. According to his sensors, the human defensive grid had just gone from a few dozen installations to over 50,000 major platforms. Each one was larger and more powerful than his flagship. "Sir," reported his weapons officer, voice shaking, "I'm reading energy signatures that don't match anything in our database. Some of these platforms appear to be generating more power than our entire fleet combined." Director Elena Vasquez of the Solar Defense Corps watched the alien fleet's confusion from her command center on Luna Station. She sipped her tea and shook her head sadly. Poor things. They really thought we were helpless, didn't they? Her assistant, a young man named David Chen, looked up from his console. "Should we activate the main defensive grid, Director?" "Oh no, that would be overkill," Director Vasquez replied. "These are just local installations, museum pieces really. Let's try to be gentle with our visitors." She opened a communication channel to the Confederation fleet. Her image appeared on screens throughout the alien armada, a middle-aged human woman with kind eyes and a patient smile. "Hello there," she said warmly. "I'm Director Vasquez. I understand you're here for some kind of military demonstration. That's wonderful. We don't get many visitors interested in our historical defense systems." On the Confederation flagship, Ambassador Zeth Kalar stared at the human woman in disbelief. "Historical defense systems?" "Oh yes," Director Vasquez continued. "These installations are maintained by our university students as part of their historical engineering programs. They're fully functional reconstructions of humanity's early space-age military technology. Quite primitive by current standards, but they work exactly like the originals did 3,000 years ago." "Primitive?" Admiral Korth checked his sensors again. The primitive installations surrounding his fleet were generating energy readings that hurt to look at. "We use them mainly for educational purposes," Director Vasquez explained. "Students learn so much more from hands-on experience with historical technology. Though I should warn you, some of the older systems can be a bit unpredictable. We've had accidents where entire asteroids accidentally got converted into exotic matter." She paused to check something on her tablet. "I hope you don't mind, but I've called General Thompson to come speak with you. He handles our local security concerns, though honestly, he's more of a weekend hobbyist than a real military officer." The communication ended, leaving the alien fleet surrounded by impossible defenses and trying to process what they had just heard. These weapons that could destroy star systems were student projects. The woman who controlled them treated military matters as a weekend hobby. General Marcus Thompson arrived 20 minutes later on a small transport ship that seemed to ignore several laws of physics during its approach. He was a cheerful man in his 60s who looked more like someone's grandfather than a military commander. "Sorry to keep you waiting," he said, addressing the alien fleet over open channels. "I was at my grandson's birthday party. Wonderful cake, by the way. My daughter makes the best chocolate frosting in the solar system." He settled into his chair on the transport ship's bridge, which somehow gave him a perfect view of the entire alien fleet despite being impossible from a geometric standpoint. "Now then," General Thompson continued, "Director Vasquez tells me you folks are interested in our military capabilities. That's great. We don't often get professional soldiers wanting to learn about historical warfare techniques." Ambassador Zeth Kalar found his voice. "General Thompson, we are not here to learn. We are here to demand your surrender." "Surrender?" General Thompson looked puzzled. "But why would we surrender? Are we at war with someone? I haven't received any notifications about a war starting." "We are declaring war on you right now," growled War Prince Krikstar over the communication channel. "Oh," General Thompson's face lit up with understanding. "You want to have a war game? How exciting. We haven't had a proper military exercise in decades, though I should mention, our actual military forces are busy with that machine intelligence cleanup in Andromeda. Will it be okay if we just use our local militia?" The general brought up a holographic display showing various human installations throughout the solar system. "Let's see, we've got about 300 million people in the local defense corps. Most of them are part-time volunteers, of course, teachers, shopkeepers, artists, that sort of thing. but they know how to operate the basic defensive systems. He pointed to various installations on his display. These platforms here are run by the high school engineering clubs, excellent training for the students, and these stations are maintained by our retirement community. Keeps the elderly folks active and engaged. Admiral Korth felt something like panic rising in his chest. General, are you saying that your defenses are operated by children and old people? Well, the basic systems, yes, General Thompson replied. The advanced installations require at least a college degree to operate safely. We learned that lesson after the incident with the pocket dimension generator. Took weeks to get Professor Martinez back from that parallel universe. The alien admiral tried to process this information. The humans were treating galactic-level military technology like a community hobby project. General Thompson, Ambassador Zethkalar said carefully, our sensors indicate that your defensive installations possess enormous destructive capability. Oh, absolutely, the general agreed. Safety regulations, you understand. We can't have defense platforms that might not work in an emergency. Each installation is capable of sterilizing several star systems if necessary. Though we try to avoid that kind of thing. Very messy, and the environmental cleanup takes forever. Several star systems? War Prince Krikstar's voice was faint. Per installation, yes, though the targeting systems are designed to minimize collateral damage. We're very safety conscious these days. It's amazing how much damage you can accidentally cause if you're not careful with exotic energy manipulation. General Thompson looked thoughtful. Actually, if you're really interested in our military capabilities, I could arrange a demonstration. Nothing too dramatic, of course. Maybe we could relocate a few asteroids, or adjust the local space-time curvature. Very basic stuff, but it might give you an idea of what we're working with. The Confederation fleet hung motionless in space, their weapons still charged, but their crews too stunned to act. Everything they had believed about military power, about their place in the galaxy, about the nature of advanced civilization, was crumbling around them. These weren't conquerors or warriors. These were teachers and retirees, and students who treated planet-killing weapons like gardening tools. They spoke about reshaping reality the way other species might discuss the weather. And the most terrifying part was how genuinely friendly they were about it all. Sir, whispered Admiral Korth's communications. Officer, what do we do? The Admiral stared at the human general's kindly face on his screen and realized he had absolutely no idea. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Korth was completely out of his depth, facing an enemy that didn't act like an enemy and possessed capabilities that shouldn't exist. He was beginning to understand why humanity had been contained for 3,000 years. The question now was whether it had ever worked at all. War Prince Krikstar had conquered 47 worlds in his long military career. He had seen species beg for mercy, fight to the last warrior, and try every desperate trick in the book to avoid defeat. But he had never seen anything like the humans' casual dismissal of his fleet's power. They are bluffing, he announced to the other Confederation commanders during an emergency meeting. No species can possess the capabilities they claim. Their displays must be elaborate illusions designed to make us retreat without fighting. Ambassador Zethkalar was less certain, but the War Prince's confidence was infectious. Perhaps you are right. We have seen no actual demonstrations of their supposed weapons, only sensor readings that could be falsified. Exactly, Krikstar growled. I propose a direct test. Let me attack one of their smaller installations with a limited force. If their defenses are real, they will stop us. If this is all an illusion, we will expose their deception. Admiral Korth nodded reluctantly. Very well, take 1,000 ships and target that platform near their outer moon, but be ready to retreat if their defenses prove genuine. War Prince Krikstar selected his most powerful vessels for the attack, ships that had reduced planets to rubble, weapons that had boiled oceans, shields that had withstood the fury of stellar cores. He formed them into a battle formation that had never failed him in 4 centuries of warfare. The target was a small, human installation orbiting beyond Pluto, so far from Earth that it seemed almost forgotten. According to their scans, it was staffed by only 3 humans and showed minimal energy signatures. If the humans were going to fake their defenses anywhere, this isolated outpost would be the place. Attention human installation. War Prince. Crickstar broadcast as his fleet approached. You are about to be destroyed. This is your final warning to abandon your position. The response came from a cheerful voice that sounded impossibly young. Oh wow, are you guys doing a war game? That's so cool. I'm Jake, and this is my summer internship project. Can you guys hold on a second? I need to check the safety protocols. On the human installation, 3 people were having an animated discussion. Jake was 19 years old and working on his engineering degree. Sarah was his supervisor, a graduate student in her 20s. The third person appeared to be an artificial intelligence displaying itself as a floating hologram. Bob, Sarah said to the AI, what are the safety requirements for dealing with hostile fleet actions? The AI, who had chosen to appear as a middle-aged man wearing a cardigan sweater, consulted its databases. Standard protocol requires us to ensure no permanent harm comes to attacking forces while maintaining the security of our installation. I recommend a Class 3 containment field with educational component. Educational component? Jake asked. We should explain what we're doing as we do it, Bob replied. Professional development opportunity for the visiting military personnel. War Prince Crickstar watched this casual conversation with growing fury. The humans were discussing his attack fleet like it was a school assignment. Enough, he roared. All ships open fire. Reduce that installation to atoms. 1,000 alien warships unleashed their fury simultaneously. The combined firepower could have cracked a moon in half or boiled away a planet's atmosphere. Energy, beams, plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, and exotic particle weapons all struck the small human platform at the same moment. The installation vanished in a ball of light bright enough to be seen from Earth. For a moment, War Prince Crickstar felt satisfied. Finally, some evidence that the humans were not invincible. But then his weapons officer made a confused report. Sir, all weapons show direct hits, but I'm not reading any debris field. What do you mean, no debris field? Before the weapons officer could answer, the human installation flickered back into view, completely undamaged. The 3 humans were still visible through their observation windows, apparently unharmed and continuing their conversation. Jake, Sarah was saying, did you remember to activate the defensive systems before they started shooting? Oh, right, Jake slapped his forehead. Sorry, I got distracted. Bob, can you handle the response? Certainly, the AI replied politely. Attention visiting fleet. Thank you for the combat demonstration. For safety reasons, we have relocated your attack to a pocket dimension where it can continue without endangering anyone. Please observe. A section of space near the human platform suddenly became transparent, revealing War Prince Crickstar's fleet inside what looked like a giant bubble. Inside the bubble, the alien ships were still firing their weapons, but the energy blasts were having no effect on anything. As you can see, Bob's voice continued, your weapons are functioning normally within the contained space. However, the dimensional barrier prevents any damage to external reality. This is our gentlest defensive option, designed for situations where the attacking force might not realize they are outmatched. War Prince Crickstar tried to move his ship, but found that while he could navigate normally within the bubble, he could not break through its walls. His most powerful weapons had no effect on the barrier. It was as if his entire fleet had been placed in an unbreakable jar. This is impossible, he whispered. Actually, came Jake's voice over the communication channel. It's pretty basic dimensional engineering. I'm still learning this stuff, but according to my textbook, pocket dimensions are one of the easier applications of space-time manipulation. Sarah nodded agreement. Jake's doing really well with the practical exercises. Last week he accidentally created a small black hole during a physics experiment, but he managed to collapse it safely. Very impressive for a first-year student. You created a black hole by accident? Admiral Korth's voice was faint with horror. Just a tiny one, Jake replied modestly, and I fixed it right away. Bob helped me with the calculations. Professor James Kim materialized next to the installation in a small transport ship. He was an elderly human with wild gray hair and an excited expression. Fascinating, he announced. studying the trapped alien fleet through some kind of advanced scanner. These are remarkably well-preserved examples of early Stellar Age military technology. The energy distribution patterns are exactly what we would expect from fourth-generation plasma cannons. And those antimatter containment systems. Textbook. Examples of classical physics applications. He opened a communication channel to War Prince Krickstar. "Excuse me, War Prince, I'm Professor Kim from the University of Luna. I specialize in the history of primitive warfare. Would you mind terribly if I added your fleet to our military museum? I can offer a very generous finder's fee, and of course you would retain full credit as the donor." Primitive warfare? Krickstar's voice cracked slightly. "Oh yes. Your technology represents a fascinating period in galactic military development. We have very few intact examples of weapons from the pre-singularity era. Your ships would be invaluable for teaching students about the evolution of space combat." Professor Kim pulled out what looked like a simple notebook, but when he opened it, holographic displays filled the space around his ship. "I'm particularly interested in your shield harmonics. According to my readings, your defensive systems operate on principles that were abandoned by most species over 2 million years ago. Historically speaking, you're using incredibly old-fashioned techniques." 2 million years? Ambassador Zethkalar's voice came weakly over the fleet communication system. "At least," Professor Kim confirmed cheerfully. "Though I suppose old-fashioned isn't quite fair. Your people have maintained these classical technologies remarkably well. It's like finding a perfectly preserved ancient artifact." Jake looked up from his control panel with a concerned expression. "Professor, should I release them from the containment field now? I'm running out of power, maintaining the pocket dimension." "Running out of power?" War Prince Krickstar asked desperately. "Well, the installation's main reactor is being used for my other project," Jake explained. "I'm trying to build a small star as my final exam, so I'm just using the backup power systems for your containment field." "You're building a star?" "Just a small one," Jake assured him. "Maybe half the size of your sun. It's really hard to get the fusion reaction stable, though. I've had 3 attempts collapse into neutron stars, and one turned into some kind of exotic matter that Professor Kim had to help me clean up." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "Stellar engineering is tricky. I failed my first star-building project, too. Made a red giant instead of a yellow dwarf. Very embarrassing." Bob the AI looked thoughtful. "Perhaps we should return the visiting fleet to normal spacetime before Jake's power reserves are completely depleted. It would be unfortunate if the containment field collapsed unexpectedly." "Good point," Jake agreed. He pressed a few buttons on his control panel, and suddenly War Prince Krickstar's fleet found itself back in normal space. Their weapons completely drained of energy, but their ships otherwise undamaged. "There you go," Jake said brightly. "No harm done, though you might want to recharge your systems before trying anything like that again. Bob drained your power cells as a safety precaution." Professor Kim was still examining his readings with delight. "Absolutely marvelous. The precision required to drain 1,000 ships' worth of energy without damaging any critical systems is extraordinary. Young man, you have a real talent for non-destructive warfare techniques." War Prince Krickstar sat in the meeting took place in a conference room that shouldn't have been able to exist. It was located inside a space station that was somehow bigger on the inside than the outside, orbiting a moon that had been temporarily moved closer to Earth for convenience. Ambassador Zethkalar tried not to think too hard about the physics involved. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat across from the alien delegation, looking perfectly comfortable despite representing what was apparently a post-galactic civilization. She had kind eyes and spoke in the patient tone of someone explaining something simple to confused children. "I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding," she began gently. "We've been aware of your surveillance and your truce since the beginning. We thought it was a cultural preservation program." Elder historian Morthak, the oldest and wisest member of the Confederation delegation, spoke carefully. "You knew about our monitoring stations?" "Oh yes, they're quite charming," Ambassador Chen replied with a warm smile. "Very well designed for their era. We've been maintaining them for you, actually. Some of the older ones were starting to degrade, So our engineering students fix them as part of their historical technology courses. War Prince Krikstar, still shaken from his encounter with the human defense platform, asked weakly, "You've been maintaining our spy equipment?" "Of course. We couldn't let such important historical artifacts break down. Your monitoring systems are excellent examples of early galactic surveillance technology. Our xenoarchaeology departments have written dozens of papers about them." Ambassador Zethkalar felt reality shifting around him again. "You thought we were running a cultural preservation program, weren't you?" Ambassador Chen looked genuinely confused. "I mean, you quarantined our birth system, set up monitoring stations to ensure nothing interfered with our natural development, and kept other galactic powers from making contact with us too early. It was exactly the kind of thoughtful approach we would expect from a mature galactic civilization." She brought up a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. "We've been so grateful for your protection. Do you know how many young species get contacted too early and end up dependent on outside technology? By maintaining the preserve, you gave us time to develop our own solutions to the basic problems of space travel and energy manipulation." "Preserve?" Counselor Vriktal's voice was barely a whisper. "The Sol System Preserve," Ambassador Chen confirmed. "We assumed that was the official designation. We've been very careful not to disturb the historical accuracy of the protected area. All the space stations, ships, and technology you've been monitoring are authentic reproductions of early human space-age equipment." "Reproductions?" "Well, yes, we couldn't use our current technology inside the preserve without ruining the educational value, so we built everything exactly as it would have existed 3,000 years ago. It's actually quite challenging to make spacecraft that primitive without having them fall apart." Professor Kim, who had been invited to explain the educational aspects of the preserve, nodded enthusiastically. "The historical accuracy requirements are very strict. Every single component has to match the original specifications. We even use the old programming languages and operating systems." "You've been deliberately using primitive technology?" Admiral Korth asked in amazement. "Only in the preserve," Professor Kim assured him. "Everywhere else we use standard post-classical systems, though even our current technology is fairly basic compared to what we're hoping to achieve in the next few centuries." Ambassador Chen looked thoughtful. "Actually, now that we're talking openly, I should probably explain the situation more completely. The preserve exists within what we consider a nature sanctuary." She expanded the holographic display to show a much larger region of space. The Galactic Confederation's entire territory was highlighted in green. "This is the Milky Way Galactic Nature Preserve," she explained. "We established it about 2,000 years ago to protect the natural development of galactic-level civilizations. Your confederation is one of our most successful preservation projects." The silence in the room was deafening. "We're a preservation project?" Ambassador Zethkalar asked faintly. "A very successful one," Ambassador Chen assured him. "You've maintained galactic peace for millions of years, developed interesting solutions to interstellar governance, and created beautiful examples of classical space-age culture. The anthropology departments absolutely love studying Confederation society, but," Elder Historian Mortok struggled to process this information, "you've been managing our entire civilization?" "Oh, not managing. That would interfere with natural development. We just make sure nothing catastrophic happens. Prevent asteroid impacts, stabilize stellar activity, clean up the occasional supernova before it can damage inhabited systems. Very basic cosmic maintenance." War Prince Krikstar looked up with a confused expression. "The great nova of Sector 7 that mysteriously fizzled out 50 years ago?" "Solar engineering training exercise," Ambassador Chen confirmed. "Second year, students learning stellar stabilization techniques. They did quite well, actually. Turned a potentially deadly explosion into a nice light show. The miracle cure for the red plague that appeared just when it threatened to destroy the hegemony of crystal worlds? Medical research project. One of our biologists was studying historical disease patterns and realized she could help out with a simple gene therapy treatment." Admiral Korth was beginning to understand. "Every time our civilization faced a truly existential threat, you intervened." "Only when necessary," Ambassador Chen said. We're very strict about non-interference policies, but we can't let entire galactic civilizations be destroyed by random cosmic events. That would defeat the purpose of the preserve. The alien delegation sat in stunned silence, trying to process the fact that their entire galactic civilization was essentially a cosmic zoo, carefully maintained by beings they had considered primitive. Finally, Ambassador Zethkalar asked the question that was bothering all of them. What happens now? Now that we know the truth? Ambassador Chen smiled warmly. That's entirely up to you. You have several options. She brought up a new display showing different possible futures. You can continue exactly as you have been. Most species prefer this option when they learn about the preserve. Your lives continue normally, your civilizations develop naturally, and we continue providing invisible cosmic maintenance. Nothing changes except that now you know why your galaxy has been so unusually stable. What are the other options? Counselor Vrichtal asked. You can accept a partnership role. We'd provide access to post-galactic technologies and invite you to participate in larger projects. But that comes with responsibilities. You'd be expected to help maintain other preserves, assist with cosmic engineering projects, that sort of thing. And the third option? Ambassador Chen's expression became slightly sad. You can choose independence. We remove all protective measures and let your civilization face the universe on its own. Most species aren't ready for that, but it's always an option. War Prince Krixtar surprised everyone by laughing. It was a broken, slightly hysterical laugh, but genuine nonetheless. I just realized, he said, still chuckling, that I spent my entire military career conquering worlds inside what is essentially a nature preserve. I'm not a feared warrior. I'm a historical reenactor. Professor Kim looked up with interest. Actually, that's a fascinating way to look at it. Your military campaigns are excellent examples of classical galactic warfare. We have students who study your strategies in their ancient history courses. Ancient history, War Prince Krixtar repeated, then broke into fresh laughter. I'm a living museum exhibit. But instead of despair, he felt something like relief. For the first time in centuries, he didn't have to be the terrifying War Prince. He could just be Krixtar, a person who happened to be very good at historical, military techniques. I'd like to apply for the partnership program, he announced suddenly. I think I'd enjoy being a cultural liaison, maybe give talks to human students about classical galactic military history. Ambassador Chen's face lit up. That's wonderful. Our history departments would love to have a primary source expert. You could share your first-hand experiences with different species' military traditions. Ambassador Zethkalar looked around at his delegation, then back at the human ambassador. I think most of us would prefer to continue as we were, but with the knowledge of what we're part of. It's actually quite comforting to know that someone is making sure our galaxy doesn't accidentally get destroyed by cosmic disasters. Excellent choice, Ambassador Chen agreed. We'll make sure you have emergency communication channels in case you ever need to contact Preserve Management. And of course, you're always welcome to change your minds if you decide you want partnership status later. The meeting concluded with what might have been the most surreal moment in galactic history. A group of alien conquerors shaking hands with their human preservationists and thanking them for the excellent care their civilization had received. 6 months later, War Prince Krixtar stood in a lecture hall at the University of Luna telling fascinated human students about the time he had conquered the diamond systems using only traditional PL